You remember the exact moment you decided you would never become like them. It was a Tuesday, 3 years ago. You were sitting in the break room, eating a sandwich you'd made at home because you couldn't afford the cafeteria prices, and Marcus was telling you about his performance review. He'd exceeded every metric. He'd stayed late 17 times that quarter. He'd brought in 2 new clients worth 6 figures each. And they'd passed him over for the promotion and given it instead to someone who golfed with the regional director. Marcus wasn't crying, but something in his face had died. You could see it. The moment a person realizes the game is rigged, that the rules they followed so carefully were never the real rules at all. He kept talking about maybe looking elsewhere, maybe it was time, maybe this was a sign. But you both knew he wouldn't leave. He had a kid starting middle school. His wife had just gone back to finish her degree. He was trapped. Lost, and the company knew it. And they'd used that knowledge like a tool. You remember thinking, very clearly, if I ever get power here, I won't do this. I won't become the thing that breaks people like Marcus. It felt like a vow. It felt sacred. The email arrives on a Friday afternoon, which is when they always deliver news they want you to sit with over the weekend. You read it twice, then a third time, because the words don't quite connect to reality. Your title is changing. Your salary is changing. You're being moved to the 7th floor, where the carpet is newer and the windows are larger and the silence is different. Heavier somehow, more expensive. You call your mother first. She cries. She says she always knew, always believed in you. And you can hear the pride reshaping her voice into something almost unrecognizable. You call your partner next. They want to celebrate, want to take you somewhere nice this weekend. Somewhere you couldn't afford before, but can now. The numbers in the offer letter keep floating through your mind. It's not just more money. It's a different life, a different category of person. That night, lying awake at 2 a.m., you feel something you don't expect. Fear. Not excitement, not pride, but a thin, cold thread of fear stitching itself through your chest. You tell yourself it's just anxiety about the new responsibilities. You tell yourself it's imposter syndrome. That's that thing everyone talks about. The feeling that you don't deserve what you've been given. But that's not quite it. The fear is quieter than that, and harder to name. It's the fear of a door closing behind you. It's the fear of looking back in 5 years and not recognizing the person looking back. You push it down. You decide it's ungrateful to feel anything but joy. You fall asleep practicing the humble way you'll tell your colleagues on Monday. The first week is orientation. You learn where the executive bathrooms are, which have real towels instead of paper and soap that smells like something other than industrial antiseptic. You learn the names of people you've seen in the elevator for years, but never spoken to. Richard, Catherine, the one everyone calls Dev, though his full name is something longer and you're embarrassed to ask. They shake your hand. They welcome you. They look at you with something that isn't warmth, exactly, but acknowledgement. You exist to them now. You have become visible. Your new office has a door that closes. This seems like a small thing, but it isn't. For 3 years, you worked in the open floor plan, surrounded by the sounds of typing and coughing and speakerphone calls from people who didn't understand how sound works. You learned to concentrate through noise, to build walls inside your head because you couldn't have them anywhere else. Now you have an actual wall. Now you have silence whenever you want it. You close the door more often than you expected. At first, it's for focus. Then, it's for privacy during difficult calls. Then, it's simply because you can. because the option exists, because the door is there and not using it feels like waste. You don't notice how rarely you visit the fourth floor anymore. You don't notice how the break room, which used to be the center of your workday, has faded into somewhere you pass on the way to somewhere else. Ikuan, the first decision that matters comes 6 weeks in. There's a project that needs staffing, an important one, visible, the kind that gets mentioned in quarterly reports. You have to choose 2 people from your former team to work on it. The choice is obvious. Priya and James, the 2 strongest performers, the 2 who've been carrying more than their share for years while waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. But Richard takes you aside. Not officially, not in a meeting. Just a casual conversation by the coffee machine that somehow feels like a test. He mentions that Priya has been difficult in cross-departmental meetings. He says James has a reputation for not being a team player, whatever that means. He suggests other names. People you know are less qualified. But who golf with the right people, who laugh at the right jokes, who have learned the invisible curriculum that Priya and James have never been taught. You say you'll think about it. And you do. You think about it that night, and the next day, and the day after that. You think about what Richard's suggestion really means, about the system that rewards compliance over competence, about the Marcuses of the world who followed the rules and got nothing. You think about your own position, your own security, how quickly the carpet could be pulled out from under you if you become known as difficult too. In the end, you choose Priya and one of Richard's suggestions. A compromise. You tell yourself this is wisdom. This is how change happens from the inside, gradually, strategically. You tell yourself you fought for Priya when you could have fought for no one. You tell yourself James will have other opportunities. You don't tell James anything. You don't know how to explain the calculation that weighed his future against your own and found him lighter. The language changes first. You start using words you used to mock. Bandwidth, circle back, synergy. They felt like jokes when you were on the fourth floor, corporate poetry that meant nothing, sounds people made to fill silence in meetings. But now they serve a function. They create distance. They allow you to say things without saying them, to deliver bad news in words so soft they barely register as news at all. We need to optimize our resource allocation, means someone is losing their job. There's a strategic realignment happening, means the thing you promised last month is no longer happening. I hear your concerns, and will take them under advisement, means nothing will change. But this conversation is over now. You learn to speak in this new dialect, and slowly, you forget you're speaking it. The words stop feeling like costume. They start feeling like yours. Your partner notices first. They say you talk about work differently now, that you sound like a press release sometimes, that they can't always tell what you actually think about things. You laugh and say it's just the stress, just the new role, just adaptation. But late at night, you replay your own sentences in your head and realize you don't always know what you meant either. The words came out smooth and professional and empty. And somewhere underneath, the thing you actually felt stayed silent. Marcus gets passed over again. You hear about it through channels. Not from Marcus himself, because you don't talk to Marcus anymore. Not really. Not the way you used to. You see him in the elevator sometimes. He nods. You nod. The silence between you is different now, charged with something neither of you will name. The promotion he wanted went to someone on the 7th floor. Someone who reports to you. Someone you recommended in a meeting Marcus will never know about, using words that made the choice seem obvious. You didn't think about Marcus when you made that recommendation. That's the part that bothers you most, when you let yourself think about it. You didn't think about him at all. He wasn't a factor. He'd become invisible again. The way people on the 4th floor are invisible to people on the 7th. The way you used to be invisible before someone decided you were worth seeing. You tell yourself the person you recommended was genuinely qualified. This is true. Well, you tell yourself Marcus would have struggled with the new responsibilities. This might be true. You tell yourself these decisions are complicated, that you can't save everyone, that sentimentality has no place in leadership. And that word, leadership, sits in your mouth like something borrowed, like something you haven't earned the right to use. The first time you raise your voice at someone, you feel sick for hours afterward. It's a junior analyst who made an error in a report, a small error. The kind you would have made 3 years ago. The kind that happens when people are overworked and under-resourced and trying to do more with less. But the error made you look bad in front of Catherine. And something in you snapped. Some wire pulled too tight for too long. You didn't yell. You were careful about that. You've seen what happens to people who yell, the HR complaints, the reputation damage, the quiet removal from the track that leads upward. Instead, you spoke in a low, more controlled voice, each word precise and cold. You explained exactly how this error reflected on the team, on the department, on the judgment of whoever approved this analyst's work in the first place. You let silences stretch until they became unbearable. You watched her face change, watched something shrink behind her eyes, and you didn't stop. Afterward, alone in your office with the door closed, you feel the nausea rise. You think about calling her back in, apologizing, and explaining that you're stressed and you took it out on her and it won't happen again. You think about the junior analyst you used to be, and the managers who spoke to you the same way, and how you swore you would never. But you don't call her back. You don't apologize. Because you know, with a certainty that lives in your bones now, that apologizing would be weakness, that showing remorse would undermine your authority, that the people above you don't apologize, and if you want to stay among them, you need to learn their silences too. You send her an email that evening, neutral in tone, professional, suggesting a meeting to discuss strategies for quality control going forward. It reads like an olive branch if you squint. It reads like nothing at all if you don't. The relationships don't end all at once. They just thin, slowly, like fabric washed too many times. Your partner says you're always distracted. They're right. You are always distracted. It's always thinking about the next meeting, the next quarter, the next move in a game you didn't realize you were playing until you were already deep inside it. You go to dinners and your phone sits face up on the table. And even when you don't check it, you're aware of it, waiting for it, giving it an attention you used to give to the person across from you. You stop seeing certain friends. Not consciously, not deliberately. But the invitations dry up because you kept saying no, and then they stopped inviting. And now months have passed, and you couldn't say exactly when you last heard from them. They're doing things you don't understand anymore. Struggling with rent, complaining about bosses, living in a world you've quietly exited. You have less and less to say to them. Your problems are different now. Your problems are budget projections and stakeholder management and the particular exhaustion of being responsible for people whose names you sometimes forget. Your mother calls every Sunday. You answer when you can, which is less often than it used to be. She asks how you're doing, and you say, busy. And she says she understands. And the conversation loops through the same territory it always does. Her health, the weather, the neighbor's dog that keeps digging up her garden. You used to find these calls grounding. Now you find them slow. Now you find yourself glancing at the clock, calculating how long until you can reasonably say goodbye. This is what they don't tell you about rising. The view from the top isn't just different. It's isolating in a specific way, a way that makes the ground you came from seem like a foreign country, populated by people speaking a language you've started to forget. 1 year in, they give you a bigger office. The move takes an afternoon. You don't do the packing yourself. Someone handles that now, someone whose job is to make your transition smooth. You sit in meetings while your old space is disassembled and your new space is prepared. And by the time you return, everything is in place. The same laptop, the same files, the same family photo on the desk. But in a room with 2 windows instead of 1, and a view that includes a slice of the park. You stand at the window for a long time that first evening, watching the city turn gold and then gray, watching people become dots and then disappear into transit. You think about what you wanted when you started here. You think about the list you used to keep in your desk drawer, the one titled, "Things to Change When I Have Power." You haven't looked at that list in months. You couldn't say where it is now. Probably in a box somewhere, or thrown away during one of the moves, or simply lost in the shuffle of becoming someone who doesn't keep lists like that anymore. The things on that list: fairer hiring practices, better work-life boundaries, like actually listening to junior staff. They don't seem impossible anymore. They seem naive. They seem like ideas from someone who didn't understand how systems actually work, how budgets actually constrain, how every decision is a trade-off and every choice forecloses 100 others. You understand now. You have the view from inside the machine, and the machine is more complicated than you knew. And changing it is more complicated still. And somehow understanding this has become indistinguishable from not changing anything at all. The second time you raise your voice at someone, you don't feel sick afterward. This is the thing you notice. Not the words you said, not the expression on their face, but the absence of nausea in the hours that follow. The absence of guilt. The smooth way you move from that interaction to the next meeting, to the next decision, as if nothing of consequence has happened. You think about this in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while your partner sleeps beside you. You think about the person you were, the person who felt sick, and you try to locate that person somewhere inside yourself. But she seems distant now, historical. Like a previous draft of a document that's been revised so many times, the original is unrecoverable. You tell yourself this is growth. You tell yourself this is professional maturity. The ability to separate emotion from decision, to do what needs to be done without being derailed by feelings. You tell yourself that soft people don't survive in these positions, that empathy is a luxury you can no longer afford, that the kindest thing you can do is be effective. The rationalizations come easily now. They've worn grooves in your mind, paths of least resistance that your thoughts follow without effort. You barely notice you're making them. They've become automatic, invisible, not like the corporate language you no longer hear yourself speaking. 2 years in, you fire someone for the first time. Not a layoff, not a reduction in force, or a restructuring, or any of the other soft words that distribute blame across the system. This is your decision, your signature, your meeting in the small conference room with HR present, and a box of tissues on the table that everyone pretends not to notice. His name is Daniel. He's been with the company for 11 years. Longer than you, longer than most. His work has slipped over the past year, deadlines missed, quality dropping, the kind of decline that's usually a symptom of something else, something happening outside these walls. You know this because you've seen it before, because you used to be the person who noticed these things and tried to understand them. But you don't ask Daniel what's happening. You don't offer reduced hours or a leave of absence or any of the interventions that might cost the department money, but might also save a person. These options occur to you, briefly, in the meeting with HR, where you discuss the documentation. They occur to you and you dismiss them because the budget is tight, because the team is stretched, because Daniel's decline is affecting other people's performance. And at some point, someone has to make the hard decisions. You use that phrase, hard decisions. And you hear it come out of your mouth and you recognize it. It's what they always say, the people above you, when they do things that hurt people below them. It's the phrase that makes cruelty sound like courage. And now you're saying it and meaning it. And you can't tell anymore if you're speaking their language or if their language has become yours. Daniel cries. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in the restrained way of a person who expected this and still couldn't prepare for it. He asks if there's anything he can do, any way to fix this, and you say the decision is final. You say you're sorry. You say you wish him well in his future endeavors. The words are hollow, but they're the right words. The words that minimize legal liability and emotional exposure and the chance that this interaction will follow you out of this room. Afterward, may you go back to your office and close the door and sit very still for a long time. You wait for the feeling to arrive, the guilt, the doubt, the sick certainty that you've become the thing you hated. But the feeling doesn't come. There's just a flatness where it should be. A silence in the place where your conscience used to speak. You have a meeting in 15 minutes. You pull up your calendar and check your email and the day continues. The people who knew you before start to look at you differently. The ones still at the company, the ones who used to eat lunch with you and complain about management and dream about what they do differently. They're careful around you now. They laugh at your jokes a half second too quickly. They agree with your suggestions before they've fully heard them. They CC you on emails that don't require your attention, seeking approval you haven't asked them to seek. At first, this feels like respect. It takes you a while to recognize it as something else. It's not respect. It's fear. The same fear you used to feel around the people who had power over you. The vigilant, careful fear of saying the wrong thing to someone who could alter your life with a signature. You've become that signature. You've become the person others calculate around. This should bother you. You remember when it would have bothered you. When you swore you'd be the kind of leader people could be honest with. The kind who remembered what it felt like to be powerless. But honesty, you've learned, is complicated in hierarchies. People can't be honest with you because the stakes are too high. And you can't be honest with them because your honesty now has consequences you can't control. So everyone performs. You perform the approachable boss, the open door, the "my office is always open" promise that everyone knows is a lie. And they perform the engaged employees, the grateful team, the feedback that's been carefully stripped of anything that might land wrong. And underneath all the performance, the distance grows and grows and eventually seems natural. Just the way things are, just the shape of power. You run into Marcus on a Wednesday afternoon. It's been months since you've spoken, really spoken. And the encounter is accidental. You're both leaving at the same time, walking to the same parking garage, and moving through the same gray corridor between the building and the world outside. He looks tired, older than he should. You remember when you used to talk for hours, when you'd grab drinks after work and dissect everything wrong with this place? When you'd promise each other you'd never lose yourselves to it. Now you don't know what to say to him. The words that used to flow between you have dried up, replaced by a silence that feels like an accusation. He asks how things are going, up there. You say fine, busy, the usual. He nods. You ask about his daughter, the one who was starting middle school 3 years ago. And he says she's in high school now? Can you believe it? Time flies. You say you can't believe it. You say it feels like yesterday. And then there's a pause, and in that pause, something opens. You know, he says, and his voice is careful, measured, the voice of someone who's thought about this for a long time. I used to think you'd be different. When you got up there, I used to think you'd be the one who changed things. He doesn't say it with anger. That's what makes it worse. He says it with something like grief, like the death of a belief he'd held for a long time. You should say something. You should explain, defend, rationalize. All the things you've become so good at. But the words don't come, because you know what he's seeing. He's seeing the version of you that you became, and he's comparing it to the version you promised to be, and the gap between them is too wide to explain away. It's complicated, you finally say. He nods. It always is. And then you both walk to your cars, separate rows, separate lives, and you don't look back, and neither does he. That night, you can't sleep. You lie in bed and stare at the ceiling and think about the list. The one you used to keep in your desk drawer. The one titled, "Things to Change When I Have Power." You try to remember what was on it. Fairer reviews. More transparency. Actually listening to people when they said something was wrong. Basic things. Simple things. Things that seemed so obvious from the outside. You try to remember the last time you did any of them. You try to remember when you stopped trying. The answer is uncomfortable. It wasn't a single moment. There was no dramatic surrender, no clear line you crossed. It was gradual, incremental, a series of small compromises that each seemed reasonable on their own. You adapted. You learned the game. You made the calculations that survival required. And somewhere in all that calculating, you lost the thing you were trying to protect. You get up. It's 3 a.m. and the house is dark and your partner is sleeping, and you move through the rooms like a ghost, touching surfaces that belong to someone you don't quite recognize. The furniture you bought with your new salary. The art on the walls that someone else suggested. The kitchen full of appliances you don't know how to use. Purchased because you could, because this is what having money means. The accumulation of objects that signify success without requiring you to feel anything about them. You stand at the window and look out at the street. A neighbor's light is on. Someone else awake at an hour meant for sleeping, carrying their own weight through the dark. You think about Daniel, sitting somewhere right now with his 11 years at the company ended by your signature. You think about the junior analyst, whose face you've begun to forget, but whose shrinking you remember perfectly. You think about Marcus, walking to his car in a separate row, carrying 3 years of silence between you. You think about the person you used to be, eating a sandwich in the break room, swearing you would never. And you realize you don't miss her. That's the worst part. You don't miss the person you were because she seems naive now, soft, unequipped for the world as it actually is. You've become someone harder, someone who survives, someone who makes the decisions and signs the papers and says the words that end people's livelihoods. And you can't go back. Even if you wanted to, even if you resigned tomorrow and returned to the 4th floor and tried to recover what you lost, you couldn't. The knowledge lives in you now. The calculations are automatic. The rationalizations are reflex. You have become the thing you hated, and the becoming was so gradual you didn't notice it was happening. And now it's done. In the morning, you go back to work. You have meetings. You have decisions to make. You have a performance review with someone who reminds you of yourself 5 years ago. Hungry, hopeful, full of beliefs about what she'll do when she gets power. You look at her across the desk and you see everything she doesn't know yet. The compromises waiting for her. The slow erosion of everything she thinks she values. The way the system will reshape her if she lets it. Rules and how she'll let it, because letting it will feel like wisdom. You could warn her. You could tell her to protect herself, to write down her values and read them every day, to notice when she starts saying hard decisions without flinching. But you don't. Because you know what you would have said 5 years ago if someone had warned you. You would have nodded politely. You would have thought yourself different, immune, too principled to fall the same way others fell. And you would have been wrong. So you say nothing. You give her the feedback she needs to advance, the encouragement that will keep her climbing, the approval that will bind her more tightly to this place. You play your role in her becoming. You welcome her to the machine. And when she leaves your office, grateful and motivated and so dangerously hopeful, you turn to your computer and open your calendar, and the day continues. And the day after, and the day after that. And you don't think about the list anymore. You don't think about Marcus. You don't think about who you used to be. You just do your job, and do it well, and wait for the next promotion, the next office, the next rung on a ladder you've forgotten where it leads. And outside your window, the city moves, and people become dots. And somewhere below you, someone is sitting in a break room, eating a sandwich they brought from home, swearing they will never become like you.